The lobby of the Belmont Hotel was spotless. The polished marble reflected the golden glow of the chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings, and a subtle scent of lavender floated in the air. No guest ever noticed, but every detail had a reason behind it. Someone worked in silence every day before the sun rose. Her name was Eliza Moore. She was no older than 28, though her eyes carried the weariness of a lifetime. Her beige uniform, her hair tied with a plain elastic band, and her rubber gloves hid the natural grace that still shone through when she smiled to herself. Eliza arrived at 5 in the morning, when the city was still yawning, and cleaned the lobby as if every tile held part of her story. That morning, though, something was different, or rather, someone was. From the mezzanine above the lobby, partially hidden behind a decorative column, a man in a dark suit watched. He wasn't looking at the chandeliers or the paintings on the wall. His eyes were fixed on Eliza, narrowed slightly, as if trying to understand something only she carried. His name was Graham Whitford, and he was the new owner of the Belmont Hotels chain. At 37, he was known as a ruthless business magnate who bought and sold companies like others changed ties. But that morning, standing by the railing, Graham was still, almost vulnerable. He watched her move the cloth across the floor, bend carefully to reach the corners, and even pause for a moment, eyes closed, as if in quiet prayer. It unsettled him. Why did she look grateful, even while scrubbing the floor? It was supposed to be just another day at another hotel, another silent inspection before a meeting with investors. But Eliza was a dissonance in that perfect environment. A woman cleaning the floor with the same reverence as someone preparing a sacred meal. And that struck him like a mystery he couldn't decipher. Graham crossed his arms, trying to find logic where there was only feeling. He didn't know that one glance would change him forever. Eliza finished cleaning the last corner near the front desk and slowly straightened, stretching her back gently. She had learned to do everything softly, silently, as if trying to pass through the world without disturbing anyone. She looked at the clock and took a deep breath. She still had half an hour before the first guests would come down for breakfast. She walked over to her cleaning cart, pulled out an old notebook, and sat on a small stool hidden behind a plant. She wrote in it every day, sometimes just a sentence, other times a prayer. But that day she drew. She sketched the outline of a hand holding a flower, and beneath it she wrote, "Beauty is what you give, without expecting anything in return." From the mezzanine, Graham noticed the movement. He narrowed his eyes. Was that a notebook? What was she doing? He didn't know it, but that flower drawing was a memory from Eliza's mother, who died when she was just 12. Her mother used to say, "Sweetheart, whenever life feels too heavy, draw what you wish it looked like." That's why Eliza always carried that notebook, and it was her way of holding on. Graham descended the mezzanine and walked along the side hallway. He moved like someone who didn't want to be noticed, but something inside him pulled him closer. When he entered the lobby, Eliza had already gone back to work, and the notebook was gone. He stopped, pretended to look at his phone, masking his curiosity. She bent to pick up a piece of paper someone had dropped, and as she stood, she noticed the man. She didn't recognize him, thought he was just another executive. She smiled, softly, then returned to her task. He responded with a subtle nod, then walked toward the exit. But as he reached the glass door, he paused and looked back. Eliza had her back to him, pushing the cart with care. There was something about the way she moved, like she belonged to the structure of the place and yet invisible. Upstairs in the meeting room, Graham sat through the investor presentation, but Eliza's image lingered in his mind. The drawing, the phrase he could almost remember, beauty, something about giving without expecting. Why had that stuck with him? "Mr. Whitford," one of the men interrupted, snapping him out of it. "Shall we continue with the Asia expansion proposal?" "Of course. Go ahead." He listened to the rest on autopilot. When it ended, he left the room before anyone could make small talk. He returned to the lobby, but she was already gone. Eliza was in the staff locker room, changing her gloves. When she saw the note taped to her locker, her heart jumped. "You dropped this." That was all it said. Alongside it, an envelope containing her notebook, but she didn't remember leaving it anywhere. She looked around. No name, just the note and the clean envelope. She opened the notebook. The flower was still there, but something else had been added. A small note in different handwriting next to her sketch. Maybe beauty really is that. Eliza brought a hand to her mouth. Who had written that? Up in his 12th floor office, Graham sat with a slight smile, as if he'd just done something mischievous. It wasn't like him to get involved, especially not with people, but that woman, that gesture, it stirred something in him he thought had long been buried. The next evening, Eliza arrived earlier. Something restless stirred inside her. Not fear, not quite anticipation. It felt like someone was watching, not in a threatening way, but like a kind of care. But who? As she entered the lobby, she noticed fresh flowers on the reception desk. A small arrangement with the exact flower she had drawn. Coincidence? She didn't know, but for some reason, she sensed the day would be different. While scrubbing the floor, she heard a voice behind her. That flower, Muna, does it have a name? She turned slowly. It was the man in the dark suit. I don't know. I drew it from memory. Why? Because it looks like it belongs here now, he said, glancing from the flower arrangement to her eyes. Eliza didn't know what to say. She looked at the flower, then at him. There was something in the way he looked at her, direct, but not intrusive, as if trying to read a page he didn't dare flip. A long pause stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of unsaid things. Do you work here? She asked, trying to break the tension. In a way, I'm just observing. Then I guess you've seen enough. Her reply came quicker than she meant, a bit sharper. Graham raised an eyebrow, surprised by her boldness, then smiled, not wide, but the kind that starts in the eyes before reaching the lips. Not yet. I think I'm just beginning. She looked down, unsure if he was joking or being serious. His tone was calm, but behind it, genuine interest. And that unsettled her more than any cheesy flirtation ever could. Well, I should get back to work. If you'll excuse me, she said, turning back to the cart. Of course, but can I ask you something? She stopped in place, didn't turn around right away, looked at the cloth in her hands like it could give her an answer. You can. He stepped closer, not too close, but near enough that she caught the faint scent of wood and mint. His voice was lower when he spoke. Why do you write in that notebook every day? Eliza bit her lower lip, surprised. No one had ever asked her that. No one had ever noticed. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his for a few seconds, a silent, heavy exchange that said more than words. There was hesitation in her gaze, and in his, a kind of respect, as if promising not to push if she didn't want to open up. Because it's the only place where my life makes sense. The words came quietly, almost a whisper, but clear and true. Graham didn't look away. They stood like that for a moment, both steady, vulnerable, and somehow equal in that small act of trust. He just nodded. Thank you for sharing that with me. And before she could reply, he stepped back, ending the moment as gently as he had begun it. Eliza watched him as he walked away until he disappeared behind the column. Only then did she notice her hands were trembling. Eliza spent the rest of her shift distracted. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. There was something in the way he looked at her. It wasn't desire, nor superiority. It was a calm curiosity, almost vulnerable, like he was trying to remember something he had forgotten a long time ago. She tried to push the thought away. She couldn't afford to feed any hopes. He was just another rich man, elegant and used to seeing everything from above. And she cleaned the floor he walked on. Literally. Still, when she looked at herself in the mirror before leaving, she noticed a bit of color in her cheeks, a softness she hadn't felt in a long time. She smiled to herself without really knowing why and placed the notebook back into her bag as if it had suddenly become more valuable. Elsewhere in the hotel, Graham was watching the security footage. It wasn't something he usually did, but that afternoon, he'd asked to review one specific clip, the time between 5:20 and 6 a.m. He wanted to see the exact moment she drew the flower. He wanted to understand what it was about that gesture that had moved him so deeply. He found no explanation. He just watched a woman sitting quietly, drawing with care, as if that were the only thing that mattered in the world. And he felt envy. Envy of someone who still found beauty in the middle of routine. That night, he barely slept. His mind kept returning to her smile, to the whispered answer. It's the only place where my life makes sense. That line echoed in him like a truth he'd never had the courage to say aloud. The next morning, Eliza arrived at the same time as always, but something in her was already different. She repeated her usual motions, the cloth, the bucket, but now her eyes searched for him, without wanting to seem like they were searching. This time, He wasn't on the mezzanine. For a moment, she thought maybe it had all been nothing, just one conversation. Maybe she'd read too much into it. But when she went to her locker at the end of her shift, there was another note. No envelope, just a sheet folded neatly. The handwriting was steady, refined. Sometimes a place only makes sense because someone fills it. Today this place didn't. Eliza read it again and again. Her breath caught. She closed her eyes. Her face warmed. She didn't know exactly what it meant, but she knew what it made her feel. Graham was traveling that week and meetings in another state. For 3 days they didn't see each other, and even though she tried to ignore it, she missed him in a way that surprised her. She kept writing. On the 4th day, she drew 2 coffee cups side by side. Underneath, she wrote, "Sometimes the silence between 2 people says more than 1,000 words." The next morning, there was a porcelain cup on top of her cleaning cart. Inside, a tea sachet and a note. "Silences that leave a mark deserve to be heard." She took the cup home, washed it carefully and placed it on the kitchen shelf. No one had ever given her anything like that. So simple, so symbolic, so kind. It made her feel seen. Graham returned on Friday. He came down earlier than usual, dressed, as always, impeccably, but his eyes searched for one thing: her. Eliza was kneeling, scrubbing a stain at the base of the counter when she noticed him. She tried to hide her surprise, but her eyes gave her away. "Missed me?" he asked. She raised one eyebrow, amused. "I missed the peace. Your absence brought quiet." He laughed, a low, honest laugh. "And the tea? Did it help?" "Never drank it. I kept it." "Why?" "Because it was the first gift I'd received in a long time." He fell quiet, then nodded, respectfully. "If I'd known it was the first, I'd have brought something prettier. It doesn't have to be pretty to be real." Her words lingered between them like a falling leaf, soft but weighty. She went back to scrubbing the stain, but he stayed, watching. "Do you always take such care with the things no one notices?" "Yes, because I know what it feels like to be one of them." This time, he had no immediate answer. He sat on the reception couch, exhaled slowly, and just watched her work for a few quiet minutes. "Have you always been like this?" "Like what?" "Quietly wise." She smiled, now without hiding it. "No, I used to be loud, until life taught me how to listen." He leaned back like this place finally made sense now, like she gave meaning to all the luxury around him. "Can I ask something more personal?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Why did you choose this job?" "I didn't. It chose me when I had no one left. And before that," she dried her hands on her apron, "I cared for my sick mother for 7 years. When she passed, I was too old to start over, so I came here. And do you like it?" "I like knowing something is clean after I pass through it. At least something." Graham felt a tightness in his chest. That woman spoke of loss like someone who had collected scars, but none of them had hardened her. On the contrary, there was a softness in her he hadn't seen in the world in years. "I lost my dad young," he said, as if the words slipped out without permission. Eliza looked surprised. He never spoke of himself. "My mum took over the business. Then I did, but there was never time to feel, only to keep going." She stepped a bit closer, still holding the damp cloth. "Do you feel now?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her, straight in the eyes. And in that silence, heavy with unspoken truths, Eliza felt something shift. It wasn't romance yet. It was recognition, as if 2 worlds had touched at the edges, quietly, but profoundly. The front desk phone rang, breaking the moment. She returned to her task. He stood, adjusted his suit jacket and murmured, "Thanks for the tea we didn't drink." She smiled. There's still time. And for the first time, he walked away without looking back, because now he knew she'd see him anyway. The next morning, Eliza woke up earlier than usual. Her body was still tired from the previous shift, but her mind was wide awake. There was a new kind of restlessness inside her, not fear, not anxiety. It was as if something had begun to change, even if she didn't yet understand what. She put on her uniform with extra care, tied her hair a little differently, picked up her notebook with a firmer grip. It felt like she was preparing herself for something, even if nothing was guaranteed. Graham also woke up early that morning. He was used to early calls, meetings, tough decisions, but on that Thursday, nothing seemed more important than being in the lobby before she arrived. He took the stairs instead of the elevator. Thought the physical effort might help calm him. It didn't. Eliza arrived at 5:05. The lobby was still silent. The lights dimmed. She grabbed her bucket, her cloth, and started from the corner, as always. But when she moved toward the grand piano, she spotted a folded piece of paper, carefully placed on the floor. When she opened it, she immediately recognized the handwriting, firm and familiar. It wasn't a note, it was a poem. She walked with quiet steps, where no one ever looked, but those who saw with their hearts knew it was her who held it all together. Her heart skipped, her throat tightened. Was that poetry, written by him? Before she could think too much, she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. When she turned, he was already there, standing and watching her with that gaze that didn't demand, only listened. "I thought maybe you'd understand this better than anyone," he said, nodding toward the paper in her hand. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything. Just read it when you need to remember someone sees you." She didn't respond, just placed the paper in her apron pocket like it was precious. Inside, she felt a mix of joy and confusion. Everything was so new, so gentle, and she didn't know if she could trust it. "Do you always write like this?" "Almost never. But sometimes when something refuses to stay quiet inside," he said, pointing to his chest, "I let it out." She looked at him, deeply, for the first time without fear, and saw he had let his guard down too. The next few days were a silent dance. Glances exchanged across the lobby, brief conversations near the service elevator, notes left at the edge of the counter. Nothing grand, but each gesture was another piece falling into place. On Monday, she left a flower taped to the handle of his office door, a simple plastic flower, but carefully chosen, and a note, to remind you that sometimes beauty hides as resilience. Graham placed the flower in a velvet-lined drawer, like it was a relic, but not everything went unnoticed. Sylvia, the housekeeping manager, had started to notice the way Eliza smiled when returning from the lobby, and how Graham spent more time on the lower floors than usual. "Eliza, are you okay?" she asked one morning, her tone sounding innocent, but not really. "Yes, I'm fine, Sylvia." "Why? You seem different, more distracted. Just a bit tired, maybe." Sylvia didn't push further, but her eyes stayed sharp. That evening, Eliza stayed a little later. She was cleaning the reception mirror when she sensed his presence. Graham had just come from a meeting, but paused when he saw her. "Mirrors show what we try to hide," he said. "Or what we're done pretending not to see," she replied. He stepped closer, not quickly, but not slowly either, as if that moment couldn't be avoided. "Today was hard," he said. She looked at him, waiting. Business, decisions, meetings. So many words, yet no meaning. "And what has meaning for you now?" He paused before answering, then said without looking away, "When I see you here cleaning this floor like it's a part of you, it reminds me there are people who still care about what no one notices." Her face flushed, but she didn't look away. "Sometimes I just wish someone would truly see me." He breathed deeply. "I see you, Eliza." Silence. Then she said, "I see you too, Graham." It was the first time she used his name. It sounded intimate, real, like they were finally in the same place, despite coming from such different worlds. The next morning, something small had changed. When Eliza arrived, a second uniform was hanging in her locker. Same color, but new, better, with a soft blue ribbon stitched at the collar, and an envelope. "You deserve to be seen for who you are in G." She stood there for long minutes, fingers brushing the fabric. That was more than a gift. It was a gesture, and for that reason, it scared her. During her coffee break, she went looking for him, found Graham in a hallway near the restaurant. When she saw him, she didn't hesitate. "I can't accept this." He looked confused. "Why not?" "Because people will talk, and I don't want them thinking that She trailed off. "That you're taking advantage?" She nodded, unable to say it out loud. He stepped closer. "Eliza, I understand, but what I feel isn't about position or status. It's about how you make me feel human. And if someone doesn't understand that, that's their problem." She took a deep breath. Her eyes were misty but steady. "I don't want to lose this job, and I don't want your life to become gossip because of me. Then let me take care of it." "And who takes care of me?" Silence. Deep. He didn't have an answer, at least not yet. That night, she drew in her notebook, two hands touching by just one finger. Beneath it, she wrote, "Between fear and desire, there is a bridge called trust." The following week, he quietly changed his routine. spent more time on upper floors, but left small signs of his presence. A note in the break room, a flower inside a paper cup, a handwritten quote scribbled in the margin of a report she accidentally saw on his desk. Some connections don't need explanation, but silence doesn't last forever. Sylvia, still suspicious, decided to be more direct. She called Eliza into her office. "I want you to know there are rules about relationships between staff and upper management." Eliza's stomach turned. "I understand, but there's nothing going on." "I hope not. It would be a shame to lose someone like you over something so fleeting." Eliza swallowed hard. When she left the office, she felt the weight of reality crashing back. That morning she arrived earlier than usual, cleaned the lobby like always, but didn't leave any notes, didn't draw, didn't look for him. Graham noticed. From the upper floor he saw she was faster, more distant, not looking around, expecting nothing. At the end of her shift, she found another note, the last one that week. "If you need silence, I'll respect it. But if you still want to continue, I'll be here." She held the paper for minutes, then placed it inside her notebook with all the others. It was the first time in her life someone said they'd stay, even if she said nothing. And that was what scared her the most. That morning, Eliza arrived earlier than ever. The city was still dark. The cold air made her uniform feel stiffer than usual, and her damp shoes left prints on the floor before she even started cleaning. But she needed that silence. She needed to organize the storm inside her chest. Something was different now, fragile like thin glass, and dangerous too, because as much as she tried to deny it, the truth was, she was getting involved with someone who lived in another world, a world that with just one word could take everything from her, including this job. Still, there she was, in the same lobby, with the same cloth in her hands, but with a heart that felt increasingly restless. Graham watched from above, just like he always had, but this time there was no joy in observing. There was tension, as if the distance between them had suddenly grown, not physically, but emotionally. He wanted to go down, talk to her, explain that he didn't care about rules or appearances, but what if she did? What if the fear he felt was inside her too? He waited until she finished the right side of the lobby. Only then did he go down. His steps were slow, careful. "You're here early today," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I needed silence," she replied without looking at him. He stopped a few feet away, noticed how tightly she was gripping the cloth. "Eliza, I don't want you to defend me," she cut him off, "or fight anyone for me. That's not what It's exactly that. I've seen how you look at me when Sylvia walks by. I've seen you shrink when we're around other people. I'm just trying to protect you. But who protects me from you?" Graham went silent. The question hit hard, not because it was harsh, because it was honest. She took a breath and went on. "You came into my life like a wind, and now I don't know what's mine, what's yours, what's real or just in my head. Eliza, what I feel is real. Then prove it. Not with flowers, not with notes. Prove it with presence." He stepped a little closer. "I never meant to confuse you, but you're the first thing in years that's made me want to stay." She looked at him for the first time, her eyes wet, but steady. "And what happens if you decide to leave?" "I won't. Don't promise me that, but I need to." Silence. She lowered her gaze, and for a second, he thought she was slipping away from him right then and there. But then, she took the notebook from her cart, opened it to a blank page and wrote calmly. She tore it out, folded it and handed it to him. He opened it. "If you're going to stay, let it be with your feet on the ground and your heart in your hands." Graham couldn't find words. He simply slipped the page into his suit pocket as if it was sacred. That afternoon he cancelled 3 meetings, sent flowers to his mother, whom he hadn't seen in months, and left the office before 6. He wasn't sure why. He just knew he had to do something more. The next morning Eliza arrived and found the lobby already clean, the floor shining, her cleaning cart fully stocked, and beside it a pair of new gloves, black, soft fabric, with a note pinned to them. "Today it's my turn to take care of what you take care of, Monji." She laughed to herself, a laugh mixed with disbelief. He'd come in before her. She looked around. No sign of him, just that mark. The mark of someone who was trying to cross the bridge between two worlds. The rest of the shift felt lighter. Even Sylvia seemed less harsh. Eliza went about her work with more energy. She even hummed a tune while polishing the mirrors. But peace never lasts long. By late morning, while organizing the broom closet, she overheard Sylvia talking to another staff member. The new owner's been very present lately. People are saying he's having a thing with one of the cleaning girls. Guess who they think it is? Eliza froze. Her heart pounded. She didn't hear the rest, she already knew enough. That night she didn't sleep, barely ate. The conversation echoed in her mind again and again. The next morning she arrived on time, but different. Hair tied back tightly. No lipstick, no notebook. Graham saw her and knew immediately something was wrong. He came down quickly. Something happen? No, I'm just here to work. You didn't bring your notebook? I didn't need it today. Eliza, please, not here. He swallowed. Her face was distant. The light in her eyes dimmed. She returned to her tasks without another word, and he stood there, unsure what to do. Hours later, while cleaning the hallway near the conference rooms, Eliza found a small box placed on the bench. She looked around. She was alone. She opened it. Inside, an envelope and a fabric bracelet. Simple, one color, hand-stitched, embroidered with the words, "Even in silence, I'm with you." She held the bracelet between her fingers, then read the note. "I don't know how to protect you from the world, but I want to learn to walk beside you." There in the middle of the empty hallway she cried, not out of sadness but out of relief. For the first time she felt like she didn't have to carry everything alone. Later that day, after her shift, she went to the rooftop of the hotel, the highest place, the only one where she could see the city without feeling like she was beneath it. Graham was already there, sitting on the edge, looking at the skyline. "You don't give up easily," she said, walking over. "Not when it's worth it." "And you're sure I'm worth it?" "Absolutely." She sat beside him, looked out at the city. "I never imagined being here, not like this." "How did you imagine it?" "Cleaning, like always, but invisible." "You were never invisible to me." She looked into his eyes. "And if this doesn't work, then we'll find out together." Silence. "I'm scared," she said. "Me too. But fear doesn't have to be an ending. Sometimes it's the beginning of what matters." She took the bracelet and tied it around her wrist, then held out her hand to him. He took it, firmly, honestly. And there at the top of a world that had never felt like hers, Eliza felt she might finally be building one where she didn't have to choose between being strong and being loved. The week passed like a fragile thread of hope. Eliza and Graham saw each other in small moments, but now there was a new transparency between them. The conversations were no longer just notes and symbols. They began to include stories from the past, painful memories, and dreams never spoken aloud. She told him about her childhood in a forgotten neighborhood, about the father who left before she could say goodbye, and the mother who taught her to find beauty, even in mended clothes. Graham shared the silences of a house that was too big, the pressure of inheriting a business before he even knew who he was, and the constant feeling that no matter how much he achieved, something was always missing. "And now, what do you feel?" she asked one night as they shared coffee on the rooftop after hours. "That I found the piece that was missing," he said without hesitation. Eliza looked away for a moment, not because she doubted, but because it was hard to believe that after everything, someone looked at her like that, like home, not just a passing moment. But that feeling didn't last long. The next morning, Eliza was called to the management office. "We need to speak about your conduct," Sylvia said coldly. "What happened?" "We received a formal complaint that you're involved with one of the executives. That's a violation of internal policy." Her blood froze. She tried to take a deep breath, but the air felt trapped in her chest. "This doesn't affect my work. Regardless, it's a sensitive issue. The administration's decision is to suspend you temporarily until further notice." Eliza stood still. The world spun, but her feet were glued to the floor. Suspended, with no proof. It's not punishment, it's precaution, to avoid discomfort. She left the office feeling what it meant to be small in a place where the powerful made the rules. She walked to her locker, removed her apron, grabbed her notebook, and which suddenly felt heavier, and left the building without looking back. Graham got the news in the middle of a conference. He didn't think twice, walked out of the room, ignored the stairs, and headed straight to the executive floor. "Who authorized this?" His voice was firm but low. He didn't need to shout. "It was a joint decision," Sylvia replied, avoiding his eyes. "Then count me out of it." As of now, Eliza Moore is no longer suspended. She's promoted. Sylvia blinked, stunned. "Promoted?" "Yes. customer experience supervisor. And yes, we're revising that ridiculous policy. Eliza was home, sitting on the kitchen floor, still in shock, when he appeared, no warning, no rehearsed speech. "You came here?" "I'll always come," he said. She stood but didn't rush into his arms. Her eyes still held pain. "They suspended me like I was a mistake, and now they'll see you're the difference." She looked at him long and hard, then stepped closer. "I don't want you to fight for me just because you feel guilty. I fight for you because I love you." The words hung in the air. She had never heard those words from someone she truly believed in, and now, spoken so calmly, they felt like a beginning. Eliza exhaled slowly. "I love you too, but I need you to know. If one day this love asks us to hide, I won't go back to the shadows." Graham nodded and held her hand tighter than ever. The next day, she returned to the hotel. No uniform, simple clothes, but with her head held high. Sylvia looked at her in surprise, but this time said nothing. Graham met her in the lobby. It was empty, silent, but something had changed. In the center of the marble floor stood an easel with a framed drawing. Inside was a page from Eliza's notebook, the flower she had drawn, and below it the phrase, "Beauty is what you give without expecting anything in return." She stopped, emotion rising like a tide, looked at him, who smiled. The lobby needed something real. "I only drew that in a random moment, but it was enough to change everything." That afternoon, Eliza was introduced to her new role. She would be free to create meaningful experiences for guests, small gestures that humanized the hotel. Flowers, handwritten welcome notes, symbolic actions that made people feel seen. It was as if her way of seeing the world had finally found its place. A few weeks later, Belmont Hotel was featured in an international magazine, not for its luxury, but for a rare warmth in the hospitality industry. And among the photos, there she was, Eliza, beside Graham, both looking in the same direction. On the last page of the issue, a caption read, "She cleaned the hotel lobby, never knowing she was building a home in someone's heart." Eliza kept that magazine like a secret treasure, but the most beautiful part, she knew, wasn't printed. It came after. In the mornings, when he waited for her with coffee and no hurry. In the evenings, when she still wrote in her notebook. Only now, he sat beside her. And the day he quietly placed a small box on the counter, and inside was a simple silver ring. No stones, no luxury, just a small engraving inside. "Between silence and love, I chose to listen to you." She didn't cry. She just smiled and said yes. Because sometimes love begins like this, with a cloth, a glance, and someone who finally sees what no one else ever did. If this story moved you, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and telling us in the comments, have you ever lived something impossible that bloomed anyway?